The rain had fallen hard all night, washing away the dust of the Wyoming plains and leaving behind a smell of wet earth and pine. Morning came quietly, the first rays of sunlight slipping through the gray clouds that hung low over the valley. In a small cabin near the edge of the hills, a young woman stirred a pot of soup over a flickering fire. Her name was Clara Mayfield, daughter of the late rancher's widow, Martha Mayfield. Life had not been kind to them. Her father had died in a cattle stampede 3 winters ago, leaving behind debts, a half-broken fence line, and a promise to keep the ranch alive. Martha did her best, but her hands grew weaker each year, and Clara had become the heart of their small world. That morning, as she was carrying a bucket of water from the well, she heard the sound, soft but sharp enough to freeze her in place. A horse's pained whinny. She dropped the bucket and ran. Down by the old fence, she saw a rider slumped over his saddle, blood darkening the side of his coat. His horse was trembling, one hoof tangled in the wire. Clara rushed forward, heart pounding. "Sir! Sir! Can you hear me?" she cried. The man tried to lift his head, but his voice came out weak. I didn't mean to trespass. I just needed rest." He collapsed into her arms before finishing his sentence. Clara called for her mother, and together they dragged the unconscious man into the cabin. His clothes were torn, the mark of a bullet clear on his shoulder. Martha's old nursing skills, once used in the Civil War, came back in a rush. "This man's been shot recently," Martha said as she cleaned the wound. "Clara, get the whiskey and bandages." Clara did as told, her hands shaking. She had never seen a wounded man this close before. He was tall, even in his weakened state, his jawline rough with days of travel. His face, though pale, carried strength, the kind of strength only the plains could shape. When the fever hit that night, Clara stayed by his side. She changed the compresses, fed him spoonfuls of soup, whispered soft words even though he couldn't hear. For 3 days he drifted between life and death, and she refused to leave him. On the 4th morning, when the light came through the small cabin window, he opened his eyes. "You saved me," he said weakly. Clara smiled. "You're lucky my mother heard your horse." "What happened to you?" He looked away for a moment as if searching for a memory too heavy to speak. "Ambush," he murmured. "Cattle thieves. They took everything. My name's Caleb Hart, ma'am." The name struck a faint chord in Martha's mind. "Hart Ranch," she said slowly. "That's the biggest one this side of the valley." Caleb nodded. "Was. Until the rustlers came." Days turned to weeks as Caleb recovered under their care. The wound healed slowly, but the bond between him and Clara grew faster than either expected. She'd help him outside every morning, walking with him to the edge of the pasture. They'd sit together watching the clouds roll over the hills. "You shouldn't be out here too long," she'd tell him with a smile. "And miss the sunrise?" He'd reply, "Not a chance." He'd never seen someone so kind, so full of quiet courage. Clara worked harder than any man he'd met, yet still managed to find beauty in small things. A bloom after rain, the cry of a hawk, the smell of bread in the oven. Caleb had seen many women, but none like her. She didn't try to impress, she just cared. One afternoon, he followed her down to the creek where she was washing clothes. "You don't talk much about yourself," he said. She smiled faintly. "There's not much to tell. Just me and Mama trying to keep the ranch going. It's hard, but it's home." Caleb looked at her hands, calloused, reddened from work, and something stirred in his chest. "You shouldn't have to do it alone," he said softly. Clara looked up. "We all have to do what life gives us. You heal, Mr. Hart. That's enough for now." He wanted to tell her that her kindness had already healed more than his wound, that she had fixed something deeper, something he didn't even know was broken. But he held back. A few weeks later, trouble came again. A band of riders showed up one evening, 5 men with hard eyes and dust-covered boots. Caleb recognized 2 of them instantly, the cattle thieves. Clara froze when she saw him reach for the rifle. "Stay inside," he ordered, "no matter what happens." But she didn't. As the men dismounted and started toward the porch, Caleb stepped forward, his shoulder still weak but his aim steady. Well, sneered one of them. The rich cowboy laughed. "We were just coming to finish the job." "You're not taking another step," Caleb said coldly. Gunfire exploded, the air filled with smoke and shouting. Clara screamed from the doorway as one of the thieves lunged toward her. Without thinking, she grabbed the poker from the fireplace and swung it, striking the man hard enough to send him sprawling. Caleb shot 2 men before a bullet grazed his arm. Martha, standing behind Clara, fired the old rifle she hadn't touched in years, hitting the leader square in the chest. When the gunfire stopped, 3 men lay still, and 2 fled into the hills. Caleb dropped his rifle, breathing heavily. Clara ran to him. "You're hurt again." He smiled faintly, blood on his sleeve. "You fight like a lion, Clara Mayfield." That night, as the 3 of them sat by the fire, the room felt warmer than it had in months. Caleb finally told them the truth. He had come to their land by accident, yes, but he was no ordinary rancher. Before the ambush, he'd been on his way to deliver the deed to his late father's estate. The Hart Ranch had been sold off and he had gold, enough to buy it back. The thieves had taken it. Now, after the fight, he realized something else. The ranch wasn't worth much without a reason to stay. Weeks passed. His wounds healed again. But this time, when he prepared to leave, Clara's heart ached in silence. "You'll be heading back to rebuild," she said softly, her eyes down. "Yes," he said, "but not alone." She looked up in surprise. Caleb stepped closer, his hat in hand, voice steady but tender. "Clara, you and your mother saved my life. You gave me shelter when I was nothing but a bleeding stranger. I can't repay that with money or words, but if you'd let me, I'd like to repay it with love." Her lips parted, breath trembling. "Love?" He nodded. "You healed my wounds, Clara, but more than that, you healed my soul. I don't just owe you my life. I want to share it with you." Tears glistened in her eyes. Martha, standing quietly behind them, smiled for the first time in months. "I think your father would be proud, Clara," she whispered. The wedding came that spring, under the wide Wyoming sky. The valley bloomed with wildflowers, and even the wind seemed to hum a gentle tune. Caleb rebuilt his ranch and named it Heartfelt, in honor of the woman who mended his heart. Martha moved in with them, her laughter returning like an old song. Years later, travelers who passed through the valley would see the couple working side by side, he repairing fences, she baking bread, both smiling at the life they had built from kindness and courage. And sometimes, when the evening light turned golden across the hills, Caleb would take Clara's hand and whisper, "You once told me you only did what life gave you. But Clara, you were the best thing life ever gave me." She'd smile softly, resting her head against his shoulder. "I didn't heal you, Caleb," she'd reply. "Love did." And in that quiet corner of the Wyoming plains, the widow's daughter and the cowboy lived not just with gratitude, but with a love born from mercy, courage, and the simple power of a kind heart.